Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the monthly Truck Stop webinar from the Transportation Risk Specialist Group. Rich Bren here. Mr. Rook is on the road somewhere, and so hopefully listening, and will not be able to give you his wisdom today, but instead we have someone definitely much more knowledgeable and competent on this than Tommy or myself. Again, Rich Bren welcoming you to the monthly webinar. Each month we present these on the second Thursday at 2 p.m. Eastern Time. These are industry updates. They're educational and informational. They do not qualify for the state CEs. If you're interested in the state CE programs, those are scheduled to occur at different times and the registrations are different. If you'd like to know more about those, if you're not aware, you can reach out to Beth and utilize the trs@ibci.net email to do that, because they will provide you with information on that. As to listening today and being a participant, if you have any questions as we're going through the presentation, please utilize the chat window. You will see that on the side of your screen as part of this GoToWebinar viewer. As time allows, we'll add those in or possibly respond at the end. If we do not get to them, we will some follow-ups with you. And after this is over, they record these and they post the slides as well as your ability to revisit these later on. If you experience any audio problems during the call, please note that in the chat window, or you can call into the 800-741-4084 number. We'll attempt to correct those as we go. Again, welcome today. This is a very timely topic for us. It's a great time for us to revisit the sleep apnea topic. There's been a lot in the press lately. The regulators are scheming, or should I say determining, exactly where they're going to weigh in and how they're going to address this topic. And it's great for us to have such a qualified and experienced presenter with us today. It's a real privilege and an honor for me to have met and have the ability here to introduce Stephen Garish. Steve is the Senior Vice President of Safety and Regulatory Compliance for Sleep Safe Drivers, Inc. He's a 20-year veteran of the transportation and logistics industry. You know, many of us wonder how we get into insurance or how do we get into transportation. Well, he actually pursued it. He went to the University of Georgia and got a BBA in logistics and intermodal transportation, and then later on earned his MBA from John Brown University, emphasizing leadership and ethics. Now, I did warn him about you as a group, you know, and we're not going to get into an ethics topic today, but we may need to bring him back on that to help us someday, right? But Steve is a certified board member with ATA Safety Management Council. He's with the National Private Truck Council Board of Governors, and he is a NATME certified director of safety. So he's an ongoing learner and a contributor to our industry. For 15 years, he worked for a little company called JB Hunt, in case you ever saw any of their vehicles running down the road. And while working for Hunt, he had a variety of roles in human resource operations and safety. After that, he was with another little company called Walmart and their private fleet. And until September of 2015, he worked with them and held different safety positions during his tenure, including the Senior Director for Private Fleet Safety, and he led the safety efforts of that organization, which comprised of nearly 8,000 professional truck drivers nationwide. Well, Steve's a native of Georgia. He now lives in beautiful Lee's Summit, Missouri. He had a tenure with the U.S. Army. Thank you for your service. And we were just talking about him being in the combat reserves and some of the things that he did during his career. But today he enjoys volunteering and outdoor activities with his family when he's not out helping truck drivers on topics like sleep apnea. Again, it's a timely and a great opportunity for us today to gain additional insights and knowledge about sleep apnea, the regulations, how to address the condition, and how to prepare for the enforcement of these regulations when they're determined. So now is a good time for you to learn on what decisions can be made with the company and its human resources, which are oftentimes very good financial decisions. I've said enough, Mr. Garish. I'm going to turn it over to you and welcome you to the Motor Carrier Insurance Education Foundation. Thanks.
Right. Rich, thank you very much for the introduction, and I'm very pleased to be with everyone on the call today. Thank you for taking some time to join us to talk about this important topic. I know as I had my 20-year career in top safety roles with J.B. Hunt and Walmart, we had occasion to learn a lot of practical things, which I'm hoping to share with you today that can help maybe improve your fleet's fatigue management program. You know, when you think about fatigue, a lot of times you kind of think about long-haul operations. You know, the truck driver that's out on the road 2-3 weeks at a time, running really long, crazy miles, and just trying to stay up and not get their rest. But fatigue really affects a number of people, a number of operations in different ways. I would submit to you that a very hard-working local driver that maybe has a commute to and from work and that works, you know, a full set of both driving and non-driving on-duty hours each day can be just as high a risk for fatigue-related crashes than a long-haul driver who you can actually see their hours of service every day. A lot of times you're local, particularly in lieu of log driver, you don't know exactly what they're doing each day between work and home and community. The effects of fatigue, you've all seen them in your operations. It can affect a person's mood or their motivation, kind of their physical well-being, the way they perform, their ability to pay attention and be aware of what's going on around them. Sometimes it's harder for them to solve problems. They're less creative. You know, a very fully engaged driver behind the wheel that's rested can often anticipate the action of others, whereas that anticipation ability often is the first to go away when the effects of fatigue begin to creep in. Their ability to be patient and resilient is diminished. Their ability to learn and remember things is also affected, and then overall their health is greatly put at risk with fatigue. So when you think about you know, these effects, you know, what does it look like in the brain? You know, when you have sleep, your brain is active. You can kind of see those colored markers and a cutaway of a brain, and then on the right, without sleep, very much a duller type, you know, outlook as far as the brain activity, mostly just sort of doing things by rote memory. You know, how many times have you been on a stretch of highway, maybe you were tired or first thing in the morning, and you suddenly think back to how you got where you were? Maybe you forgot the last few miles, or it wasn't clear how you got to that point. It was more you know, muscle memory in some ways and actual active driving behind the wheel. When you think about sleep apnea, a lot of times you hear the term. It's really episodes of not breathing, you know, and the causes are oftentimes, particularly in our industry, from obstructive sleep apnea. When you think about sleep apnea, there's really two kinds. The most common is obstructive sleep apnea, which affects about 15 million people in the U.S. 90% of them remain undiagnosed. I myself have sleep apnea and found out about it in a most different and unusual way when I was at J.B. Hunt. You know, I was in a meeting where a presentation about sleep apnea was taking place, and devices were brought in that could be used with volunteers, you know, where you could see an overnight test of sleep apnea for some volunteers. And the leader of the company at the time, Greer Woodruff, at J.B. Hunt, he said, "Hey, I don't need time to find volunteers. These three guys will wear one." And he shoved one my way. And I actually found out from that in 2007 that I had sleep apnea myself. I was completely unaware of it. Now, my wife, on the other hand, very aware of it, and corroborated after that test that she suspected it for many years because of my snoring. The other type of sleep apnea is, of course, central apnea. And if you think about the two different kinds, central is more electrical. It's your brain, you know, not, you know, telling your body not to breathe, whereas obstructive sleep apnea is more like plumbing. It's your airway being cut off because of the structure of your neck, maybe your size, your neck size, being able to occlude your breathing. And the FMCSA actually did a study and indicated that about 28% of drivers suffer from obstructive sleep apnea. And there's no doubt as to why when you think about it. It's oftentimes the lifestyle, the poor eating habits, the inability to really exercise and get out that causes those much higher rates among drivers. So they really put together, FMCSA put together with a group of other administrative agencies and industry-leading organizations. They put together a program called the North American Fatigue Management Program. It was actually published in 2013, and they basically got together and said, okay, if we were going to go in and advise a company on how to create a way to manage their fatigue, how would we do it? And so they put this program together, and I would encourage you at the website I have listed below on that slide, I would encourage you to go out and check that program out. It's pretty comprehensive and involves a number of steps which we'll talk about, but many of them are absolutely free. It's just the way you look at your operations and how you manage to take care of the effects of fatigue on your organization. Really, you'll find out there this implementation manual that I've shown you a picture of. It's pretty comprehensive. I mean, it's a long read. I've actually taken the time to read it. And in it, it really lays out some key points. These are kind of like the cliff notes for that manual that I'm providing for you here. If you were to go look at that and really read through it, it talks about three key things, which are safety, driver well-being, and kind of the financial well-being. It talks about safety culture, how a program that you have to manage fatigue really should come from the top. You know, your leader of your company. It shouldn't be the safety guys or gals mission. It should come from the very top of your organization. The fatigue management program I wrote for J.B. Hunt and for Walmart in my leadership roles there were authored in terms of the display to our entire organization. They came from the very top. They didn't come from me. They came from the leaders of our company. And it means a huge difference when that message comes from the top. It involves education and training, not just to your drivers, but to every frontline manager that interacts with your drivers and their families. How do you train your dispatcher to recognize signs of fatigue? How do you provide support to a husband or wife who drives when they're at home? How do you help them manage fatigue, get ready for work, what to do when they come home from work? So that education training is very, very good, and it's all out there for free to check out on that NAFMP.org website. It talks about sleep disorder screening and treatment that involves not just putting people on machines, letting them go on their way, but actually having active compliance monitoring and support. You know as well as I, when you have any program offered to drivers, they many times don't want to just get something in a box or get a letter that tells them about something. They want that interaction, that one-on-one opportunity to talk to people. And having a good program provider like the one we provide at SleepSafe Drivers, very important part of this blueprint. And then lastly, having good scheduling methods and tools. For example, a policy that you'll want to have would involve how you hire in having radiuses of distance from work that you want to hire within for your driving jobs. It should include a fatigue management policy that has elements in it like how you manage commute time. So for example, if you have a driver that lives 100 miles from the work location, should they account for that 100 miles in the first day's dispatch? Maybe instead of a full 11-hour load, you give them a 9-hour or 9.5-hour, depending on how long it took them to come into work. Or do you give them the full 11 if they spent the night in their truck the night before on the yard? There's things you have to think about beyond just standard hours of service when it comes to fatigue. Many high-profile crashes, including one that I had at Walmart just a few years ago, are alleged to involve fatigue in the media, oftentimes involve periods of time outside of work that affect their work performance. And so it's worth looking into a good, strong fatigue management program for your organization that looks well beyond hours of service and looks into the whole holistic life of the driver and their family. And there's some great things that you can do there that are very unobtrusive to your operation that can really help your drivers and their families live better. So in terms of things around fatigue, why has fatigue become such an issue? What's going on to really make it kind of bubble up in the last year or two? And I've put a few things in here just for your consideration. One is this North American Fatigue Management Program that I shared with you about from 2013. I was actually showed that just after a high-profile case at Walmart where I was a safety director there involving actor-comedian Tracy Morgan. And the NTSB actually, the National Transportation Safety Board, actually came in and investigated that crash. And the NAFMP, plan, we went over that together with them as something that we really needed to make sure was implemented at our organization. Many of the elements were implemented already, and you may find the same for your organization too, but it's good to be able to go through that. It's certainly something that is being pushed quite extensively, particularly post-crash from high-profile cases by the NTSB. The other thing that I think made a big difference was the new Certified Medical Examiner requirements that came out in May of 2014. Prior to that, it was really kind of the good old boy system when it came to DOT physicals in many cases. I know a lot of my drivers knew their doctors for years, and it's like, if Rich were to go in and see the doc and he's known him a long time, the doctor might say, hey, Rich, any problems from this last year, medically? Nope, I'm good. All right, here's your 2-year card, and we'll see you next time. Whereas now they are required to check many things and document those checks that they weren't before. So you've probably seen huge increases in the number of drivers who are being disqualified or who are being issued what I call short cards, 30, 60, 90-day cards, instead of a 1 or 2-year card, because there's some reference for some sort of follow-up. It may well be beyond just sleep apnea testing. It might be stress testing, lipid profiles, just a number of different things that have to be done. We have a partner in the physical industry, and they found a significant increase in the number of disqualifications. About a third of the physicals they see are either short card or disqualifications compared to these new, compared to the time before the new CME requirements. So that was a big deal. You've also seen an overwhelming number of studies that have come out, and gosh, we could spend days on a call going over several of them that have really highlighted the need for fatigue management programs and showing the effects of fatigue on operations. You see increases in accidents, injuries, lost time. You see healthcare costs going way up. You see disengagement behind the wheel, turnover. I mean, there's a lot of things that really emanate from the root cause, which is fatigue. And then lastly, I mentioned a few, including the one I was involved with, high-profile cases that have come out, all of which, the ones that are certainly reviewed by NTSB, all of which bring out fatigue issues. If you were to Google the wanted list from the NTSB, just Google that, you'll find the top one on their list is fatigue, and it's been on their list, top 10 list, for many years. So it's certainly something to be addressed from your organization. There are also revenue and cost implications. So if you think about customer experience, when you have improved safety and health and well-being from your drivers because you're taking care of them from a fatigue standpoint, it helps that customer service experience improve. Someone who may have been really crabby before, now that they're getting the rest that they need and the support they need, say, for a sleep dysfunction, I've seen people change dramatically from the way they acted before to much nicer, better professional person dealing with your customers. You have, of course, improved productivity. Since you have drivers that work more, they're not out for lost time injuries or medical leaves of absence. You have to hire less 3PL providers, and you know as well as I, anytime you bring in an outsourced provider, they just don't do as good a job in many cases as your own drivers do. So it helps you from a productivity standpoint. And then lastly, it helps you keep your drivers longer. Think of the number of drivers perhaps that you've had over the last 2 years who have been disqualified medically and who no longer drive today. Maybe they have diabetes that's insulin dependent. Maybe they have a heart condition that would keep them from driving. Maybe they weren't able to pass a physical for a number of reasons. But many times today, we're seeing certainly fleets who are losing their drivers prematurely because of chronic health conditions that really could have been addressed a few years prior with good treatment around fatigue. Lastly, the benefits of a good program, fatigue management program, is you have improved quality of life for everyone, not just drivers, but their families. I mentioned my wife. I don't snore anymore and haven't since 2007 with my CPAP device. And, now I wake up, my wife's actually still in the same room with me. She gets a lot better night's sleep, and it really helps the whole family. and then I don't have chronic health conditions, thankfully, because of a better health profile. From an economic standpoint, it helps manage costs, both directly for the individual as well as indirect costs that are associated with fatigue-related issues. And then lastly, and the one that's usually most on everybody's mind, you always see reductions in accidents. And a few studies that we participated in and others that we haven't, they all say the same. You cut your accidents about in half, your injuries in half, and your healthcare costs in half among those drivers who are taken care of from a fatigue-related standpoint. When you look further at sleep disorders, you really look at a few things that emanate from untreated sleep disorders. So for example, when you look at like the U.S. healthcare cost in terms of billions of dollars, the third highest on the list, right behind cardiovascular disease and diabetes, is sleep apnea. Those who have chronic obesity, 72% of them have sleep disorder. Those that have coronary artery disease, 37% have sleep disorder. And you see the other ones listed there. There are chronic conditions that absolutely directly correlate with some form of sleep disorder. So addressing that one concern will clear up many concerns and help those individuals live healthier and longer lives. When you think about sleep itself, you think about the stages of sleep. You have kind of that light sleep that begins, it puts you in stage 1, and then it runs all the way into that deepest part of sleep, that REM sleep, the place that gives you what I would call restorative, health and well-being from that good quality sleep. Many times we find people that have sleep disorders really never make it out of stage 1 or 2. They never get into that restorative sleep cycle. Whereas when they're given the opportunity to breathe fully and not have cessations of breathing during the night, they will have that more restful, deeper sleep, which actually helps to restore and revitalize their life. You've heard a lot about sleep studies, and I want to tell you a little bit about that, so when you hear about them, you'll know what some of the differences are. There are really two. One is what we call a home sleep test, HST, and then the other one is in-lab. And a home sleep test has really become, very widely accepted, and in every case I've seen always shows the same results as a full in-lab test, but they're a whole lot less expensive and they're better for your drivers. Imagine being able to wear one of these small devices like you see in the picture in the upper right-hand corner of the slide. Looks like a little cell phone resting on that gentleman's abdomen. Imagine being able to wear that in the back of your truck or in your hotel room or at your house when you're off. You wear it overnight and then have the opportunity to have that device read and diagnose that person next day. Whereas going into a full in-lab study, they're a lot more expensive, and they really take a lot of time away from your drivers from work, and they really don't work as well for a fleet operation as a home sleep test. The tests normally look at brain wave activity, they look at the respiratory, breathing pattern, they listen for snoring, they monitor heart rate, chest movement, leg movement, and they really look at your oxygen levels in your blood throughout the night. And then this helps them identify sleep disorder, and then involved after that the treatment of the sleep disorder so that it can be restorative and helpful for the patient. So there's some technology out there now that exists in this particular area. Some of this is specific just to my company, and I'll talk about a few of these items here. One is the HST. I mentioned the portable test, about the size of a cell phone. You can wear it at home or in the cab of your truck, etc. We offer, with ours, we like to know that the person that got the test is actually the one who took it. You've used the term chain of custody before with drug and alcohol testing. We have that patented device, which is on the gentleman's hand there in the picture, which ensures that the device that's placed on a driver for use that night is on that particular driver all night. Some companies will mail a kit home or have you go pick one up, and if you're trying to avoid a true diagnosis, you might place that device on someone else. Maybe for me, it'd be my skinny little 16-year-old son. He's my same height, about 6'2", but he weighs about half my weight. So if I was trying to get out of a diagnosis, I would put that on him. And without a device like what we have, we'd never know the difference that it occurred. The other piece is something called an auto-titrating positive airway pressure device, or APAP, versus what you've heard of before, which is a CPAP, which is sort of a constant airway pressure, a positive airway pressure device. So think about it in terms of a truck. Auto-titrating would be like cruise control. So no matter what your pressure need, based on where you were delivering, or maybe you have a cold or something else, maybe your weight changes, this device kind of goes along with you and gives you the exact pressure you need. Whereas a constant CPAP type device only gives you one pressure, and it has to be recalibrated every year, going to, again, a doctor, and it's expensive to have it recalibrated each year. So what we always recommend for trucking operations, and we would recommend for any of you all, is an auto-titrating machine. Once you've been set up on one of those, you're good to go, and you don't have to go back to a sleep doctor every year. That traditional testing often involves that in-lab test, and it's expensive and time-consuming. It really doesn't work well for operations, transportation operations in particular. So where are we at on a rule? I want to touch on that. As you may know, the Advance Notice of Proposed Rulemaking was published in March of 2016, and they invited both FMCSA, Federal Motor Carrier Safety Administration, as well as the Federal Railroad Administration, FRA, working together, invited in people to be heard, industry experts, safety experts, etc., to share their concerns from this particular area, sleep dysfunction, and what they would like to see in a rule, what they thought they might like to see in a rule. And so they had 3 of these sessions, listening sessions. Our company, including myself, participated and spoke at those sessions. And then the comments for that were due back in, I believe it was June initially. That 90-day period has now closed, and they put together after that a follow-up meeting in Arlington that just took place at the end of this last month, 22nd, 23rd. We had a member of our team, our chief science officer, who went, and at that meeting they wanted to actually get draft regulation written that would be submitted thereafter to FMCSA by October. And so that writing actually took place. We weighed in on what we felt was important to have in that regulation draft, and that will go to FMCSA by October for consideration. And so where do you think we may go from here? That's kind of the big question. What's likely to be in it? When will it come out? So what I think there'll be is, and these are just my opinions, but from these sessions that we've been a part of, the things we've recommended, the things we've heard from the council already, we believe that this new rule will include the following. One will be set standards that will include things like comorbidities, which is kind of a fancy word of saying those things that are chronic health-wise that go along with fatigue, the things I talked about earlier, cardiovascular disease, diabetes, etc. They'll include that those should be considered as potential risk factors for sleep dysfunction. We would also include recommendations around a set body mass index, or BMI. Some there wanted a 40 or higher, some wanted less, and I think probably where they'll end up is somewhere around 33, being the standard, that if a person has 33 BMI or greater, along with the other comorbidities, they should be recommended for a sleep test at the time of the physical from the DOT doctor. Neck size, also potential consideration, and then I mentioned the comorbidities like hypertension as well. We believe this rule will recommend the use of home sleep tests, not just the test, but also that somehow you can confirm that the driver who was given that test is the one that actually took it. And as I mentioned, my company is the only one out there that has that particular patented ability. Third, we believe there'll be a set compliance standard put in there. So we believe that will include at least 70% usage of the device over the course of a year for at least 4 hours or more per night. So they would measure, yes, they used it last night if they used it at least 4 hours, and then looking over the course of a year, it needs used at least 70% of the time in order to be considered compliant. And then lastly, I think it'll also include reference that sleep apnea testing is really part of a larger issue or a larger consideration of having a comprehensive fatigue management program. And since FMCSA helped author that North American Fatigue Management Program, I believe that will be the standard. Again, recommend that you take some time to go check that out. As far as the timing of it, I believe that it could potentially come out before the November election, since the draft is due by October. Likely, if you don't see it by then, I bet it would be probably second quarter or so of next year, potentially, after the new administration is in place. I think that's potentially where you could see a rule. Now, again, I have to tell you, it's my guess, because when it comes to the government, you never know, right? But that's where I think there could be some possibilities for seeing a new rule. Talk a little bit about funding ideas. You know, that's the other thing that often comes up. If you talk about this sort of mandate to have people tested and treated, you know, how are fleets trying to fund that? That came up a lot during these public hearings, and it was certainly consideration and concern from the FMCSA. Based on our experience, I'll just share with you, we do these programs for fleets, and they include some large customers like Walmart, J.B. Hunt, two companies I work for. They're our clients, along with many other great companies out there, both large and small. And what we've seen is that you could probably expect to see about 5 to 7% of your fleet per year on getting referred for tests. So you saw that 28% from FMCSA. You shouldn't be worried that, oh my gosh, 28% of my fleet's going to be shut down in the first year. What we saw is, because the maximum you can really get on a medical card is 2 years, it usually takes about 2 to 3 years for your fleet to kind of get cycled through, if you will, references. So 5 to 7%, some high, some low, based on the type of fleet that you're in. So it'll take you about 3 years to see that. So if you're trying to look at your exposure, I would look at it from that perspective. Another thought is, after that first year, you know, normally the cost that you get hit with that are the most expensive are the test and the device, the APAP machine for us in that first year. Usually after that, the costs go way down to more maintenance. If you're with a company like us that does daily monitoring from a wireless device, you know, you pay for some sort of monitoring piece, and then the supplies, mask tubing, filters, that sort of thing, are all you kind of get the years after with a program like ours. And if you're on a, you know, a low-end CPAP machine, it's probably cheaper up front, but then you pay through the nose really for every year after that. You're having to go back for a new test, a new, you know, titration with the machine, and it's very, very expensive if you went a route that way. But I think after that first year, you can really see a lot of those costs go down. And I think it's important that you have a provider like us that can work with your maybe your insurance consulting group to help formulate a plan that works best for your organization. Every organization is a little different in the way you work and operate, and having a company that will kind of be, you know, flexible with you and customize a program for you is very important. Anybody that comes to you and says this is what you should do and there's no deviation from it, there's no differences, you have to absolutely do exactly what we want, they're inflexible. I wouldn't recommend that you work with them. And then lastly, I think around funding ideas, there could be combinations that involve both company funding as well as some expenses that may go to the driver, but always do it in a way where you minimize the impact. After all, this is a fitness for duty required test, just like the DOT physical, just like a drug and alcohol test. And these are things that you take care of today without second thought. This particular area should be viewed in the same way. It's something that your company really should provide and take care of, because it's a matter of fitness for duty. It keeps your company and your driver rolling. Just in terms of like what it looks like without a formalized program, like I mentioned, it'll take you on average, in our experience, about 45 days in many cases from the time the driver might get referred by their primary care physician for a test and treatment until they actually get back to work under full treatment and compliance. I mean, think about today. If you called your doctor and said, hey, I think I'd like to have my heart checked out, that specialist that you call, I would be very surprised if they said, yeah, sure, come on in today. Most of the time they give you a date, some weeks out where you have to wait and then go back in. A typical no program kind of approach for sleep is no different. You're back and forth for consultations, tests, then titrations that I mentioned for those cheaper type CPAP machines. And it can take a lot of time away from your operation and lost time with that driver being out of work. Most companies measure revenue per truck per day or third-party carrier cost per day. Anytime your driver's out, what you're paying, to replace them or outsource the load. Most everybody knows that. I know at Walmart, to hire a third-party carrier, when I left Walmart in September 2015, coming into the fall surge, was running about $1,200 a day. So if you lose a driver for 2 weeks, that's huge, huge loss to your company, not just in terms of that individual, but also the cost to cover for that driver while they're out. A program like ours, really our program at SleepSafe, gets the driver back to work within 3 days or less with minimal lost time. Most of the time the tests we can get done while they're off or overnight in their truck, and they're back to work under confirmed compliance that we check every day wirelessly from our offices in Lenexa, Kansas, and we keep everyone in compliance. 97% compliance is our current rate, and that's compared to most cases. About half the time folks stop using the device altogether when no one's checking on their compliance. So a program like ours, I think, can really help you a lot just in terms of cost and time and efficiency. When you think about like the return on investment, it's another question that often comes up. If I do a program, what's the return? I think you see, as I mentioned, in all the case studies we have out there and the ones we see in the marketplace involving fleets that we don't care for, they're all pretty consistent. You cut accidents in half, injuries in half, your absenteeism and lost time go way down, healthcare costs get cut in half, turnover, people tend to stay with the companies that are taking care of them. So we see reductions in turnover, and we also see people that aren't being asked to retire early or being retired early because of their medical exam. And I think it's easy to measure that success. When you look at the populations who are treated prior, you can look at their results prior to the treatment a year before, and then look at it a year after, and you'll always see these same consistent results. So the ROI for a program is huge.
Steve, I pretty much left you running alone here. I need to interject, since we are insurance geeks. Since we're insurance geeks, I'll reference Best Review for those of you that read the Best magazine. August 2016, there's an article in there called Counting Sheep, and in it, the Aetna organization actually references how they're using the element of sleep in their overall wellness program, and what Steve just hit upon is specifically referenced in there that their annual health care costs increase as much as $3,500 higher for someone who's not taking care of their sleep health. And so, Steve referenced himself being a hose head as well as I. We wear those masks. We look like F-16 pilots at night, but the point being our health is better. We don't have the headaches in the morning. We can get out of bed without waiting a couple hours for our oxygen levels to come back up. And that's what companies, even in our industry, our insurance industry, are realizing. So the takeaway from all of this is that you, regardless of being a truck driver, that's again a key thing Steve just said, in a safety sensitive position. This is truly critical for them when they're down the road, and we need them alert. We need them fully engaged in being able to make those thousands of decisions that they make hourly. So, I just wanted to interject that, and likewise say, you sitting at your desk likewise have a huge challenge if you are not adequately rested.
Yeah, good. Well said, Rich. And as you mentioned, these results are consistent among industry reviews, independent reviews. They go beyond just the ones that we have personally experienced. And there are a few places here, and by the way, Rich, I put some things in here for you to kind of reference later. Rich will provide these slides to anyone who might like them. I have one here that shows that reference that I mentioned earlier around reductions in lost time. We believe that could save you around $9,600 a year from those drivers because they get back to work quicker when you take care of them. There's another slide that we've included in here on the reductions in turnover, saving over $8,000 in savings. This is actually a really well put together independent study that involves several large carriers. The links are all there for you to see. With higher levels of compliance and good therapy, drivers stay with you longer. They get disqualified less. They're at work more, and that results in dollars saved that go straight to the bottom line. In terms of like key components of a program, a few of them we touched on, but just to sort of summarize here, definitely consider health expense and the impacts, the accident reductions and the expense associated with that, liability and insurance costs. If you can show, say for example, a lower DART score for your operation or a lower accident per truck per year, accidents per million mile reductions, et cetera. If you can show those clear metrics, which we believe you would, you are liable to see savings in your insurance costs. Employee satisfaction equals, and family satisfaction equals happy employees that stay with you. Having good tracking as a safety professional, you know exactly who's on therapy and their levels of compliance. You can speak to that when you're questioned by an outside authority after a crash. I can tell you I was specifically asked a few questions after the major crash that I had a driver involved in while I was at Walmart. You get asked, hey, do you have the current hours of service? Yes. Can I see their driver qualification file? Yes. Were they positive for sleep dysfunction, and do you have a program to address it? Yes. Does this driver have a commute to and from work? What was it? Etc. So those questions that you get, being able to answer them quickly and expertly saves you quite a bit of challenge in those type of environments. And then when you have that good regulatory compliance, you get a good reputation that always bodes well for you later in cases where you might be audited and that sort of thing. So in terms of any questions that you might have, I can answer most anything. I think between Rich and I, hopefully we can answer most any question that you may have. And Rich, I'll turn it back over to you for that part.
I appreciate that. Thank you, Stephen. It was awesome. I'm waiting any chats or any commentary to come in. We'll watch for that. I'm going to just summarize a few things. As some of you know, and I already referenced it, this is a topic that I'm a little bit passionate about, simply as Steve is. We suffer from it, we live with it, maybe is a better term for us to say. What's it like to pause 78 times per hour? That's basically my score as to when it comes to the number of apneic episodes. So if you can imagine gasping every 45 seconds, that's what it's like if you are not treating this. And so you do overcome a lot of things, and despite treatments, these comorbidities, that's not a very sexy word either, but those things challenge the drivers. I like the theme that you put in there at the end, Steve, about keeping drivers behind the wheel and operating safely is the way I summarized it. I think it's critical as our takeaways today to help our customers to look at this and say, are you ready for the NTSB interview? That doesn't sound like a lot of fun. Post-crash, you want to be able to say, I did these things in an attempt, to address it. So keep in mind, the long-haul drivers are oftentimes the scope of many of these things, but we're talking about the trucking industry. Honestly, your healthcare industry is challenged with their long swing shifts that they also do. Nurses, doctors, and many others are challenged. So your local driver may have a second job, and those things that Steve referenced are critical for you to figure out. And so the fatigue management plan, the NAFMP program is free. It's available online. Download, take a look at it. Great resources there. As I referenced, take a look at that best review article and utilize that as you're trying to coach and educate and say, this thing affects all industries, even our insurance industry. And so even in your own agency or your company on a wellness program, you may be likewise influenced by some of these things. If you're trying to help someone who you think may be susceptible, Steve has other resources. There's lots of quizzes and that, but one of One of the things that's easiest for me is to just talk to the person who is known to snore. As Steve referenced, we know what it's like to wake up alone or be put in another room. Go sleep on the couch, prop yourself up so you don't roar like a bear. But, that waking up in the morning, sleep headaches are oftentimes oxygen deprivation. So those are just minor things and other things that maybe you can help yourself or help others. But helping our drivers stay behind the wheel, we all know that we're so concerned about where's that driving force headed, and we don't want to lose these drivers. And as Steve said, to keep them productive and operating safe behind the wheel is critical for all of us. So I thank you, Steve, for the scope of all the variables and all the issues that you brought to us today to help people realize, solutions, some realities that come to this, and that they can start talking, and pointing people to options and opportunities to improve their entire team, their driving force, their in-house, office, warehouse, whatever it may be. So I think you've done an excellent job. I greatly appreciate it. I have a few other slides here at the end. As I mentioned, I'm a hose head. I'm a member actually of the board for the American Sleep Apnea Association. Not a commercial here, but I just want to let you know that there are some resources that you can also turn to and use there. The website provides access to many of these things noted here. Apnea Association is involved in a worldwide research program right now, and we'll talk a little bit about one of the ways that people are participating, people like yourself. We'll hit upon the CPAP. I'll make reference to Awake. That's something in the local areas that someone like yourself or others that are suffering could actually join a patient-supported local organization to sit and talk and contribute. If they don't want to do it via websites and they want to do it in more of a social face-to-face setting. The social media push across all industries, the ASAA is likewise involved with the website, Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn. So if you're connected and you want to know more, there's lots that can be learned and accessed in that manner. Sleeptember, you've heard of Movember. Again, a push on men's health. Well, Sleeptember is a focus specifically to getting more sleep in this month, but it is a year-round push that is now out there trying to help people realize these things that Steve talked about. How do they connect to help raise money, and not just for sleep, but this also can impact cancer, mental health, heart disease, and kids. It's a huge topic today about kids' behavior, kids' ability to grow and learn, etc., and being healthy sleepers. So again, another opportunity, if you're interested, is to take a look at that. The Sleep Health mobile app study is something that, again, the ability for you to download an app, Apple's a part of this thing. Apple has helped to contribute and bring this together. And not just those that have sleep apnea, but COPD and others are also enrolled in some of these research programs. So people with other type of health problems and challenges likewise are contributing to these types of research bases. If you have a smartphone, if you have an Apple Watch, it's just that easy for someone to be a part of this thing. I contribute information about my night of sleep, how I felt during the day, make some comments and contributions, and contribute that as part of a worldwide group of people helping to study sleep issues. CPAP. I like a lot what was said about auto titrating. That is a new type of device. The machine that I wear basically just blows air into me, but it keeps me, from snoring, and so I utilize the CPAP type therapy. For those that can't afford to get a machine, there shouldn't be a reason that they can't have one, and the association has thousands of devices as well as the masks and the hoses that are donated. So if you hear someone, not necessarily a truck driver, but maybe you've got a crazy old uncle that needs it, or even your aunt, there are a lot of women that struggle with this, and it could be yourself. If you have CPAP and you want an extra machine to take on travel or leave up at your cabin, the association has them for sale, is all I want to let you know. There's no reason that we can't get someone who's been diagnosed and needs a machine to have one. So it's a contribution to society that the association is helping to do, with a lot of support from the members of the association as well as industry equipment providers. That's what I have to say. Mr. Stephen, do you have anything else to contribute at this point in time?
Nothing from my end, but I'm happy to take any questions now. And then, my web email address was up there. And certainly, email me, email Rich if you have anything you want to reach out to me for to help you with. I'm always happy to be a resource. And thank you again for the time today. I really appreciate it.
Well, we appreciate you being here. The Sleep Safe Drivers website has Steve, has his phone number. Again, through the association here, the TRS, feel free to email and get connected if you do have some follow-up items. The next seminar in October, 2 p.m., same schedule as far as the second Thursday of the month, 2 p.m. Topic yet to be released. Mr. Rook didn't advise me in advance, but again, we appreciate all who participated today. And again, I thank you one more time, Steve, for all that you contributed. Greatly appreciate it. And with that, I'll say goodbye.
Thank you very much.